On this episode of the Grow Your Video Business podcast, we talk about branding, how to increase your value in the marketplace, how to save a ton of money and time when it comes to marketing, and why you shouldn't just be listing out all of your services and instead be doing this. I'm not going to tell you until we get into the episode. What's up, friend? Hey, I'm Ryan Coral from Studio Sherpas, and this is the Grow Your Video Business podcast, where I talk about how to grow your video business without burning out. We cover how to be more productive, how to work with the right clients, how to be more creative, how to get paid what you're worth, and a whole lot more. If this sounds like you, then you, my friend, are in the right place. I am so excited about this episode. I love talking about branding, and I love Justin Keller. There, I said it. I did it. Super good dude. We're in a mastermind together, and we've just been learning a lot. I've been learning a lot from him. I'm sure he's learned a ton from me. But he was very gracious to come on the show today, so you are in for a real treat. Before we jump in, I want to share a win of the week. This is something that we do inside of the Facebook group. If you're not in that Facebook group, join the community. Go to studiosherpas.com/community. And so my win of the week is really, really exciting. You guys have heard me talk a lot before about the book Traction, and the guy who wrote it, his name is Gino Wickman. And Gino and his team reached out to our team because they are filming a masterclass, and they heard that we film courses. And anyway, we're in talks with them. I haven't signed anything, so I don't know if this is like totally silly for me to be talking about this like this. But whatever, I'm just going to throw it out there anyway. Who knows what'll happen? But regardless, to have one of my own business mentors, people that I've looked up to, people that I've learned so much from, I've taken Gino's his blueprint called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and we have applied this system to our business for the past 5 years, and it has changed the way that we do business. It has changed my life in particular to where I used to be doing all of the things. Like I was in charge of hiring, firing, and contracts, and all of the big things and the day-to-day operations of the business. And with the way that he kind of lays this thing out, there's visionaries that are typically the entrepreneurs, the people that have all the ideas, and then there are integrators, people that love to make plans and execute and do the things, but also can push back on the visionary and say like, hey, you just gave me 100 great ideas. We only have the capacity to do one of those great ideas. So let's figure out which one will help move the business forward. So just understanding that was a huge, huge win for me 5 years ago, and we've built our business around that model. So today, I'm just not a part of the day-to-day running of our business, which has brought a lot of life back into me, which really has allowed me over the past 5 years of trying to grow Studio Sherpas. It's allowed me so much more time to spend inside of Studio Sherpas. I know there are a lot of people that are like, oh man, I would love to start a YouTube channel, or I would love to have a podcast, or I would love to do something like what you're doing, Ryan, helping invest in other videographers or some other industry. That would be super cool and fun and fulfilling. But if you don't have a business that is running and working and making money for you while you're spending time elsewhere, it makes it really hard. So I'm so grateful to Gino and the book and the format of EOS, and to be in conversation with them to potentially work on a project together is really, really fun. So anyway, that's my win of the week. I would love to hear yours. Get inside of that Facebook group and let us know. Go to studiosherpas.com/community, and there's a bunch of awesome filmmakers, videographers in there that would love to help support you, that would love to know you and know where you're at, connect, network, refer each other, help each other out. So do it or else. studiosherpas.com/community. All right, let's roll the ad for our podcast sponsor, and then we will jump into this week's episode with Justin Keller up next. If there was one thing that could have ended my business 17 years ago, it would be because of the numbers. I hate accounting, taxes, W-9s, W-2s, W-40s, spreadsheets, all of that stuff. And I hate it mostly because I'm afraid of it. I'm just not great with numbers. If this sounds familiar, or if you're so new in your business that it's not even on your radar yet, you need Core Group. Core Group can help you create financial systems and tax strategies that you need so you can grow profitably, and they've been doing this for over 20 years. They become an extension of your team so that you can stay in your lane of expertise and then lean on them to help guide you along the way. For me, having a team of experts in my corner to help keep track of our books and just to make sure that we're budgeting for taxes appropriately, to have an actual strategy for our taxes and our accounting is priceless, and it allows me to sleep easier at night knowing that I don't have to be an expert in that arena. If you want to avoid surprises in your video business and you want experienced help building a plan for the future that you want, both professionally and personally, head over to studiosherpas.com/core for more information. And when you're ready to set up a free consult with them, make sure to mention Studio Sherpas for a special discount too. Got your back. Get more out of your accountant. Go to studiosherpas.com/core. What is up, friends? Welcome to this episode. Today, I'm with my boy, my homie, Mr. Justin Keller, who likes to describe himself first and foremost as a dad. Not like my dad, but like, a dad. Dad with capital D. Justin founded Circle 50. He's the author of 2 business books, Human Always and Rebel Brands. He's also written one kid's book, The Red Giraffe That Wanted to Dance. Justin uses his books, podcasts, business, and the life he lives to help brands and individuals fight for brilliance in everything they do. His methods have helped nonprofits and businesses alike, including my own, increase engagement, launch new momentum, and experience massive growth. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Good to be here with you, man. Yeah,
dude, I'm so glad we're doing this.
I am too. I've been looking forward to this always.
So Justin and I were introduced by our mutual friend, Graham Cochran, and we've been spending some Thursday mornings a couple of times a month masterminding, talking about how we're going to take over the world, and he's really been an awesome inspiration for me. And he's incredibly good looking. If you follow him on Instagram, you get to see him like working out, sweating, just working hard and dropping knowledge bombs all the time. Plus he's got the locks and just everything, man. You're the complete package.
Oh man, thanks for that kind of a setup. I am sure to disappoint now at this point.
It's like, where do we go from here?
Exactly. Well, look, so, you have a better beard, and so you win in that category. I got the hair on the head. You've got the beard.
Yep. Yes. So Justin is incredible. I love. You guys have heard me talk about branding, and I love marketing, and Justin is just a complete rock star. The ideas that he's come up with, he's got a recent idea. We don't have to dive into that the t-shirt idea, not the t-shirt idea, the thing. It's going to remain top secret for now. I'll let Justin decide if he wants to talk about that. But branding is such a powerful thing, and it's one of those things that I realized a long time ago when my first business, I launched my video company, and it wasn't until about 2 years into having that business that I actually had somebody work with me that was a branding expert. Before that, I was designing my business cards, I designed my website, and I'm not a designer by trade. I like that stuff, and it was fun to kind of create it. But when you have somebody come alongside you that's an expert, and you look at what they create compared to what you create, it's like, oh, okay, that's why you actually do. That's why people pay you a lot of money to do this, and it's so much more than a cool website or a cool logo and some neat colors. Justin, how do you describe what you do when people ask you, what the heck do you do?
Yeah, I mean, from the branding standpoint, what I focus on is really helping people establish a clear message and the way they talk about their brand, what they offer, the services they offer, making sure that's compelling, it's simple, and then turning that into strategies, for them to engage, their audience better. So that's As simple as that, man. I'm a consultancy focused more on that, more than even just the creative services. We started as a full service creative agency, and just as it's evolved, I saw a greater need where organizations and businesses, entrepreneurs, they couldn't talk about their business. They knew how to do it really well, but they couldn't talk about it in a way where someone quickly said, oh, yeah, we could use something like that. And so I really shifted to help people identify, how to communicate who they are so that they connect that to the right people. Because you can find designers online for cheap. That's more of a commodity. You can find, websites. I even tell people start with something like a Squarespace or, so many different templated solutions out there. That side of it is the easy side of it, actually. That's the other side of communicating, thinking through how does this need to make sense and speak to the pain and speak to the promise that I deliver. So, yeah, that's what I focus on.
Yeah, that's really good. And I mean, that's a good point because it directly relates to what we do as filmmakers and videographers. It's like the craft. I mean, yes, you can be an incredibly talented designer. You can be an incredibly talented filmmaker. There's always something that you can learn, new techniques you can apply to, just expand what you're able to do as a filmmaker. But it also can be incredibly easy, and you could do it with your eyes closed at some point. When you're working with clients who need a video, the typically they either want something, just, hey, be the tripod, come and bring your cool camera and shoot some stuff for us. We need some footage. We need you to follow our directions. But then what most companies don't realize what they really need is some strategy behind this cool video. They need a purpose, and they think, well, we need more sales, or we need more, we need to grow our email list, or we need more exposure, so let's do a video. And that's probably not a smart enough strategy, right? There's more involved, and if you're leaning on your videographer to help you come up with that without talking through that and just assuming that, a good video is going to provide that, a lot of the videos that we are going to create are going to fall flat and typically aren't going to get called back by that client to do another video because they're like, oh, well, I mean, it's cool, it looks cool, but the needle hasn't moved at all in our business. Do you see similarities in what we do and what you do?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if we just even kind of look at this from a more macro view to start with and look at the word brand, and really that word, it goes back to the brand on a cow. It really goes back to the etymology is back to that, the mark that's put on something, and then it goes back to how the U.S. trademark system was developed, but it's all based on a mark. And so when you think about the brand being the impression that you make, when you think about it like that, brand's probably never been more important than now, because you could look at yourself as a videographer, and then now you are amidst a bunch of different videographers that are all maybe in the eyes of the potential client, just, again, a commodity, just like a designer could be. If I said I'd make logos, you might say, so does Fiverr. Why do I charge tens of thousands of dollars for that same thing that someone's charging $500 for, right? So we can't just, now brand isn't about just saying this is what I do. Brand is about being able to create a perception that this is what I solve. And so your value goes up when your brand is perceived as a problem solver. So yeah, I see exactly what you're talking about, where if you come in and let the client tell you what they need, they'll also tell you what they're going to pay. If you come in and help a client see that what they're asking for is a great starting point, but there's more opportunity, and it can be backed by engagement, it can be backed by results, you tell the client what that's going to cost them. That's
really good. Yeah, that idea of if they're in control, it's like when I go to Fiverr. Okay, I've never done this, but if I've ever gone to Fiverr to get a logo design, okay, I'm in it right now. But I know for me, I just need something quick. I don't need strategy for this thing. I could spend an hour in Photoshop doing this thing. I just need to slap something on this so that it looks betterer than if I were to do something. but this is like a small, like this isn't this is like a little side thing that I'm testing and trying out. So really, like, the strategy is all of the other things that I'm doing. The design for me is just like one small part, but everything else is like the language that I'm using to try to get people to opt into my thing and to watch the workshop and do all of this stuff. So in that same, what you're saying, like, I go to Fiverr and I'm like, I'm expecting to pay $50 or $100 for a logo. So if somebody on Fiverr is like, well, it sounds like you're going to charge a lot of money for this thing that you're wanting to create eventually. So, I'm going to charge you $500, and I'm going to be like, no, because I know that I can get somebody else over here. If somebody's able to somehow convince me that, listen, you can do the $50 logo, but that's going to do more harm to you, to your brand, to what you're trying to do. It's going to take you longer to charge what you want to charge. There's more to it than just, slapping a logo. Like, as soon as I start realizing, like, oh, there's more to this than just it looking good, but maybe it designed a certain way is not going to resonate with my target audience. And then so, I'm making things way harder for myself from the get-go.
Well, let's use that as an example, because you sent me some of the concepts that you were getting, right? And so it's a perfect example, though, of, if I'm a designer or I am hold on, did that beeping pick up?
I can barely hear it.
I'll start over just because that's going to turn off in a second. Sorry, that was
Your
a dehumidifier. No, dehumidifier. Yeah. It's like, you got to run those here. But no, that's a perfect example, because if I'm a videographer seen as someone who's just going to come in and hit record and just, basically provide a task and for them, with you, when it came to getting the logo, you were still missing that expertise. You were still missing that guidance. And so whether I'm a designer, I'm a consultant, I'm a videographer, when you're in the service industry of any sort, where you're providing this service that solves an issue that they have, a problem that they have, you have to think of yourself not as a task manager or task provider, but you have to think of yourself as a guide. And the only way you do that is by presenting yourself as, instead of, here's my list of services, here's the issues I see, and here's how we solve that. We happen to use these tasks and these methods to do that. And so it's you get out of the commodity game as soon as you step into the expertise game, because it's invaluable for you to have someone in your corner. You can, in your case, you were able to just text and say, hey, what would you tell this person to do? Because design does matter still, but ultimately, what you're paying for when you charge more is you're paying for expertise, you're paying for a guide, you're not paying for, someone to come and turn on their iPhone and hit record,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And that was one of the biggest epiphanies that I have had as a business owner in almost 2 decades, where, I just, so many times I would be so frustrated with at least half of our clients, especially when we started doing corporate stuff. Like, I felt like we were at their beck and call. We were doing endless revisions. We'd get to the end of a project and the client would be like, okay, cool, we got what we wanted. But it just didn't, I didn't like the experience. The client didn't like the experience. And so I was just kind of like, ugh, like, what was that? But when I, for the first time, realized I had somebody who was willing to pay me to be their guide, right? My friend Preston, I had him, he had done some consulting for me, and I was like, man, that's like so valuable. And I remember what he charged, and I was like, you know what? Like, I feel like I would love to, instead of getting, halfway into a project with a client and us trying to convince them that, hey, you should actually do it like this instead. And they already know what they want. They already think that they know what they want. And I haven't positioned myself as the expert in, like, guiding them in this. We're going to create it for them, but we're certainly not going to be the ones that say it needs to be like this and here's why. But with my friend Preston, I said, hey, listen, we can do this project with you, but before we jump in, it sounds like you already kind of know what you want. Why don't we, because I'm not sure that's actually what you need. And that kind of like phrase, that sentence, I truly believe that. I wasn't like trying to think of a new product that I could offer. I was like, I don't think that's the best thing for, I know you, you're my friend, I know your business, I understand it, and what you're asking for, I think it's going to miss the mark. So similar to what you have offered me in this workshop thing, I'm going to offer you a workshop where we're going to spend, and I'm just kind of making it up on the fly. We're going to spend a couple hours together. We're going to talk through the ideas. We're going to get understanding, of your audience and what really is the goal here. And when I started asking all of these questions in the form of a, quote unquote workshop where I'm the consultant or I'm the guide, that was worth money. And we got out of that workshop, and the last thing I asked him, I said, how was this? Like, was this helpful? And he's like, oh my gosh, like mind blown. He's actually the first one, and I forgot about this, but he's the first one who paid us for the workshop that didn't do a video. We got to the end of the workshop, and I was like, you should just do a podcast. You're going to save a ton of money. Do a podcast. Anyway, our workshop has taken on a little bit different form today because the only way we'll do a workshop is if people have committed to a budget and they kind of know what they want, but they need a guide. And that's exactly how I position it. What you said, we get a phone call and I'm trying to figure out, do they just need us to be a tripod or do they need us to be a guide? And I give them the different options and just ask them, like, what does it sound like you need? Do you just need our cool cameras? And if they say yes, then cool. Like, I can give you a quick and dirty price for that, and that's probably not a project we're going to be super excited about. Maybe not, whatever. But most of the time, 9 times out of 10, people are like, no, we don't do video professionally, so we need somebody to walk alongside us. We would love for you to help direct it and come up with the concept and all that stuff. So all that to say, 100% on the same page with you. That idea of being a guide is so much more valuable. You can charge so much more money when you bring that to the table.
Yeah, I mean, there's room for any of those things that you just described. Like there's room in the market for someone to go be a tripod for someone and make a business out of that. There's room for, the higher level expertise. Your brand is ultimately what people say you are, right? And so it's as simple as that. So they might say, if you want your brand to be defined as, we are the people you call last minute to come hit record so that you can get a video up online on social media or whatever tomorrow. Like, great, be that. Let that be what people describe you as. But if you're not that and you don't want to be that, then you have to start questioning your process of, like you just described, onboarding clients or the questions you're asking, the pre-qualifiers. You have to really look at, if I position myself this way, how will they describe me? That's your brand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really good. And sometimes we don't want to know how people describe us because we're afraid of what they might say.
Well, you get to decide it. It's no different than, I have a philosophy that, I'm grateful for my clients and I approach them humbly, but I also believe that you teach all people in all relationships and even clients you teach them how to treat you. And so even when it comes to defining your brand, yeah, I don't control the words they use, but I do set the temperature. I do set the tone, and they may not describe me exactly like that. But if I'm priced at a certain level, let's say, and I don't want to be seen as cheap, I control that by pricing, right? If I'm known as difficult to work with, and I'm okay with that because I want to work with fewer, I can set that temperature. I don't control how they say that or describe me. Someone might call me a jerk. One might just say he's hard to work with, but worth it. But you do ultimately teach people how to at least start the conversation around who you are and what your brand is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. It's really just, it comes down to like realizing that and then just owning that. Like, okay, like I can respond differently and realize that this is what I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
And people can say what they're going to say, but if you can latch on and say like, this is really my brand, and then you can start to make decisions based around that. But without that kind of like clear, guidance, it's just like, I just remember doing everything for everybody, early on, and it was hard to really know because I would go to a networking thing and people would say, what are you doing? I'm like, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's times for that. I mean, and there's even seasons when you can be selective, and then all of a sudden you can't be. I mean, the ebbs and flows of business. You don't always have the luxury of overflow necessarily, even if you're really good. So it's just a confidence of saying, like, this is just for a season, maybe, that I have to be all things to everyone that I've tried to be to get some business, but still, like, not letting go of that confidence of knowing you're worth more. You are different than that. It just maybe, like last year with COVID, maybe things changed and you had to evolve in the way you did things, and maybe you're still having to, so it's that confidence of knowing your worth, yet knowing that your worth doesn't get devalued if you do what it takes to keep your business going.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Thank you for saying that. What would you say in the world of branding, like, what do most small businesses get wrong? Like, how do they miss the mark on, understanding branding, or, the things that they're doing right now to themselves? Like, how are we hurting ourselves without really understanding, how our brand can help us and really be that guiding light for us?
Man, there's so many ways to go with this. Yeah. I think probably the best starting point, though, would be probably something that isn't news to everybody, but it needs to be a reminder, which is making everything about themselves. Even if you are offering a service to someone, it's not about you. It's not about what you do. The difference is saying we make videos versus saying we help you grow, or whatever that might be, whatever you're promising, right? So leading with yourself versus leading with the promises that you deliver, and speaking to the pain that people are experiencing, that's probably the first place. People get so quick to just communicate, here's our services, here's what we're doing, instead of forgetting about just the process that, transactions, most of us aren't in a transactional business, right? As a videographer, myself in the consultancy, like, if I put something out there today, you're not going to probably buy it right away. And you need time to develop that relationship, and people buy from people that they know, like, and trust. And so I think getting impatient and making it about you and rushing the process are for sure starting points. I would say another big mistake is spending time and money toward the wrong things. So, when you launch, or you're small, you don't need a crazy website. You don't need a lot of you could use simple, just a clean font for your logo. You don't need to put a lot of money towards these things. You don't even have to be on all social media platforms.
Right.
I think just putting your efforts towards the wrong things and not going toward the right things that actually move the business forward. We all make that mistake still. I mean, my business is 9 years old now. I still have to catch myself and say, oh crap. Like, for instance, I'm not on social media as much right now because I'm like, that's not moving the business forward, because I'm strategically not using it like that.
Right.
So I haven't posted on the business account for 3 years, probably, maybe 4.
How do we insert the cricket sound effect? Can we do that? I'm with you. I 1,000,000%. It's like, I remember I struggled with that for a long time with a couple of our previous brands, where we didn't post on, we were super active on Facebook, on our Facebook page for a long time. And then when we got out of wedding films and transitioned to corporate work, we posted, but like, we got like hardly any interactions. So it was just kind of like, oh, this is lame. But we felt like we had to, just because, like, oh, you're a business, like, you have to, you're on, what are all the social channels you're on? It's like, and you feel guilty and bad if you're not on all of them. And that is like, pick one, right? Pick one and do it super well. If you don't get any traction, then like, scooch, maybe try a different one.
And I know we're in a different day and age, but since we're on the topic of social media and we're thinking about building your brand, it has its place. I won't discount it and disregard it and say that it doesn't need to be part of your strategy ever. But also think about it like this. A lot of big companies and successful people have existed without social media. Brands grew without social media before. Walmart grew without social media. I'm not saying that it hasn't helped, But if you're relying on that to just be the business,
Yeah.
I really think you're in trouble, because you're also on someone else's real estate. You're leasing that. You're not even, you don't own it. And so, there's, I think you and I are in the network with someone like Graham, and I think he would be 100% behind this kind of concept that you have to think about what can I control versus what does an algorithm control. And so there's a lot of things that get dismissed, strategies, even, depending on what size of business you have. You might want to do workshops. You might want to do mailers. You go back to physical mail. I mean, that might make sense for yours. But I think, we just get this idea that we have to be so big, and so we have to try to reach so far. And really, man, you can grow a pretty dang good business by just starting with taking care of 5, taking care of 10, taking care of 15, taking care of 20 really, really well, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's powerful. I think that's where, I've seen that question a lot. It's like, hey, I'm in a really small town, and like, how do I expand and like reach? And it's like, have you really tapped in? Because in your small town, are there businesses that are doing really well? And it's like, oh yeah. There's always like, it's like, well, if they're doing really well, then they could probably use your help. And you don't, this feeling of like, well, I've tapped all my resources. I've like reached out to everybody, and maybe you have, and at that point it's like, it is time to expand your network a little bit. But a lot of times we've tried a couple of things, and it's like, it's not working. So,
and some of that could just be a business model too, right? I mean, look at if someone feels like they've helped everybody, then you go back even to some of those clients, you have to go back to some of the same ones and be able to present a strategy to them, put in your own time, your own dimes, and be able to come to them and say, hey, based on what we did last time, were you happy? Yeah, absolutely. Great. I put together, a strategy that I think if we did something consistent every month, start with 6 months, I think this could really help you guys create consistency. And would you be open to that? And here's the, and if it works after that, maybe we can talk about, longer term. But it's just a business model of like the one-off jobs, and especially in a smaller town, you have to probably be thinking recurring revenue. So you got to be thinking more retainer based at that point. But
yeah, that's really good. And we've done that exact thing where we have one client where we did a little over 6 figures for a couple of years in a row. And then I just said, hey, would you be willing to hire us to do a strategy? I know you guys are going to do more videos this year, but let's just like get on the same page. We can help direct like some of these projects and talk about these ideas. And anyway, we got them to pay us to do this strategy workshop. They did almost $200,000 of business that next year. And it was amazing. Like, we were, again, in this position of like, we were the guide, even though most of the conversation was about them talking about, all their initiatives and different things. And then we just did similar to what you're saying. We put together a plan and said like, okay, these were the 12 videos that you guys had talked about. These are 3 things that could be ongoing things, like your B-roll library and a couple other things. And, pick and choose out of these what do you think is most important out of all of the things that we discussed? And they picked like almost all of the things, and we're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But that's so smart to go back to your clients that you liked, that you think you did a good job, and just ask them those questions, and then put some kind of, hey, this is what's working in the marketplace. I could see you guys doing this. Is this something that you might be interested in? Way easier to do that than to, go knocking on a door who you've never met and never done any work with and have no connection with.
Man, and I tell you what, like, your worth just skyrocketed even if they don't work with you, when they talk about you, if you're seen as someone who, one, you lifted a load for them before, so you're a load lifter. You want to be called that. You want them to feel like they can run their business and rely on you to handle this side of it. Second would be proactive. If they describe you as, man, these guys came up with ideas for us, we didn't go with them, but that's what every client wants, is to know that you're thinking about them as much as they're thinking about themselves too, right? So you just described like the ultimate. I mean, if you're described as 2 things, proactive and load lifter, I mean, couldn't have 2 better words described, for your brand.
Yeah. And I love that. Like, the thing that's so good is that even if this client that I said, hey, would you guys want to do this workshop and whatever, and they said no, like, we don't have capacity, we're not doing any videos this year. exactly what you said. Like they're still like when they're in conversation with somebody else, and we've been referred 2 times by this organization for other really big organizations because they felt that, like that, what you're describing. And if you're going to refer somebody, I want to refer somebody that I know is going to be hungry and is going to go after it and really is going to serve those clients well. So in this instance, and we haven't done this well with all of our clients, but in this instance, this client feels that. And so they're not only are they doing a lot more business, but they're also referring us to other businesses.
Yeah. No, I love that.
That's good. What I would just love to know what right now would you say would be one of the, and this could be business or personal, you're such a deep thinker, and if you guys like books, if you like somebody who not just philosophical and like deep but super relevant, Justin, when I've shared your Instagram with my wife, and she's like, wow, he's so dreamy. But also the knowledge, you have such a good heart, dude. Like I love your heart, and I love your passion for people and for really just trying to get the most out of life and make the biggest impact with your life, but then also trying to empower that in other people. I mean, you can't not know you and talk to you for 5 minutes without realizing that that's your heart and like one of your biggest calling and purposes, and something that is inspiring to me. So anyway, that in the same breath, what are you learning right now?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the kind words, and I do absolutely think we all exist to first make someone else's life better, and in return, ours is made better. And so I think when you think of yourselves, whether it's videographer or whatever you are, I mean, just if you are existing for yourself, it's going to be a pretty empty life. So I appreciate you kind of noticing that shift in my life, because that hasn't always been probably the case. And that when you ask, what am I learning? I think that I'm learning patience in my life. And that's not easy, because I am typically someone who tries to control every variable and make things happen faster than they have to. And so I think part of patience is just this idea of learning how to see the needs of others. I'm not talking about neglecting yourself and not, taking care of yourself and all that, but being able to put yourself in a position to not react out of urgency or need, and to be patient and see other people's needs and be free to respond to those. That's probably one of the things that I'm learning right now is the importance of that, and the importance of relationships. When I started my business, it was by myself. I've had seasons where I've had employees. I've had seasons where I've scaled it back and gone back to more of the solopreneur kind of feel, even right now as a consultancy, shifting from the creative services. But along the way, no matter what, I think right away, there was definitely more of a grip on, like, this is my idea, my concepts, even with clients. And I'm learning to the importance of the relationship of others, whether that's people who help pave the way for me to be able to get a client and do work, or help teachers that are helping my son develop, and just the importance of each other is something that it sounds really simple and trite to communicate, but and this utopian like concept, but it really is a component to building a meaningful life that I think I neglected. I got busy. I just made time for what I thought my needs were, and taking care of my son, my family, me. And so I'm learning to be patient. I'm learning to bring others along in the journey and build relationship better with others without needing something in return too. I think those are a couple things right now that I'm learning.
I love that. And, the thing that I do appreciate about your, like when you share on Instagram, your stories and stuff is that you share like when you're in the middle of the muck, instead of just the end of the story, like, oh yeah, everything worked out. And here's, it was a struggle and it was hard, but everything's great now. But you're in it and sharing that. And I feel like that just brings, it gives people permission and it gives people a sense of like, hey, you can be free in the midst of chaos and in the midst of struggle and in the midst of like not knowing. Like there is freedom there that you can have. And so I think that probably is one of my favorite things. And I've shared that with you before in one of our chats with Graham, but thank you for doing that, because I think that serves as an inspiration for a lot of people to feel like, okay, maybe I don't have to have all things all figured out, and that's okay. And maybe I can even talk and share and let other people know that I don't have everything figured out, and that's okay. And maybe that's actually kind of healthy too.
Ryan, you know this too. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it when you're working with clients. There's like, if you go back to speaking, most of your audience, are videographers, and they're building their own video business, and you get this fearful mindset that you have to have it all together or they're not going to work with you. And I'll never forget, like, there's been multiple opportunities, but I had one for sure where I even told a client, I said, I don't do exactly what you're asking for. I've done it a little bit, but not to the degree you need. Look, if you're willing to, I'd love to work with you. I know I can solve this. And if you're not satisfied, like, you owe nothing. Like, but if you trust me, I know we can get this across the finish line. And just that humility to be like, I don't actually know it all, or even the courage to say, I don't know how to do that. We haven't done that, or we don't do that. Here's someone else who does. It's so refreshing for others to hear that someone doesn't have it all together. It's also just liberating for yourself to realize, like, oh crap, I lost that, multiple $1,000 client, but I actually feel good that I'm not going to be in the middle of this pressure of trying to figure out something and fake something that I don't know. And so I think that's just, whether it's the content we put out, man, or the way we sell what we do, it's like the truth really does make everything easier, even if it's harder immediately,
Yeah. Yeah, I think I shared this pretty recently, but I remember a few years ago we were filming this dad's third kid's wedding. We'd going down to Ohio and just work with his family. They're just like the most precious, best people. And during cocktail hour, he pulls me aside. He's like, so how's business going? And I'm like, actually, it's not going that great. It was a really hard year for this. I think this was 2016. It was the same year that I launched Studio Sherpas. And so I was like distracted and not doing a good job anywhere. I was just kind of like maintaining, barely hanging on at some point. And it was that same year that I'd sat down with two other couples and my wife and just kind of started crying, sharing about like the pressure I was feeling and the money that we didn't have, and just like wondering like, how am I going to make it? And like, so like these feelings were all real. And so the dad, who I tons of respect for, and I could have easily, because he's got this amazing business, and I could have easily just said like, oh, it's going great, and like we're crushing it and ready to take on huge corporate clients, whatever. But I just said, it's not going. It's really hard right now. And he pulls his wallet out and he gives me a business card. We're at his daughter's like cocktail hour, and he genuinely cared about me, and we ended up chatting a few months after that. And his huge business that he was the CEO, I mean, like $1 billion business, they hired us to do, we did over 6-figure projects for them, and have since done other stuff with them. And they've just been incredible. But the point of that story is that in that authentic moment of me just being, because I could have said like, oh, it's going great. I guarantee he would not have pulled out his wallet at his daughter's wedding and given me his business, like his actual business card, to say, call me, like, let's talk, about this. It was like, he was like, wow, no, I appreciate you being totally honest. And now don't you go the opposite end and, go up there and be, oh man, it's like, it's really bad. Do you have a business card? Maybe we should talk. Like, it's probably not a great strategy, but being honest, like that's the strategy that I think has worked.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yeah, definitely don't go up to every potential client and say, business has been really tough. Would you guys like to work together?
Yeah, because that it's probably not what most people want to hear. Most people that don't know you don't yeah. That's, well, no, actually, I shouldn't say that either. Yeah, that's probably a whole conversation. I want to get into this idea. I know you talk about this. This is kind of on your heart too, about how business is personal. And we're kind of talking about it right now, but tell me more, like, what do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, I mean, I always butcher idioms. They always make me sound like an idiot when I say it. But there's phrases and sayings out there that
I can't relate. I have a speech communication degree, so I'm like, when it comes to talking and speeching, I'm super good at it.
And speeching, okay, perfect, yes. Yeah. So it's either, I always switch it around, but it's not personal. It's just business, is what people say. Or they'll say it's business, it's not personal. I don't know which one it's supposed to go in the order. But
right. And now I'm confused.
The concept is still the same, but I'm pretty sure that, don't take it personally. It's just business is the ultimate tone that they're trying to set. And that's kind of a justification for maybe I can be an asshole to you because this is just business, but you and I are friends also. So later we can have a beer together, and now it's personal. Right. And that might have worked. Maybe there was an era where that you could get away with that. But in the time that we've been living in for at least the last decade, those lines were maybe at one point blurred, and those lines now are completely obliterated, and they're no longer existent, because our lives, I think what's important to realize is that, people, it's a small world out there, so people that you work with know people that you do life with, and you don't want to be described as the jerk to the people that you're working with, and over here you're the guy that everyone loves hanging out with. The discrepancy is going to cause distrust, and with social media and all the things that are out there to put out your own life, if we start to see our lives as one of the most important things that happens is, we start to create like a value system or at least a moral compass and a guide for the way we live our life, and let that transcend into the way we build a business. And so we're consistently showing up for people and for others. Like if I'm not okay yelling at, let's say if I'm married, I'm not okay yelling at my spouse, so then why the hell would I be okay yelling at my employee? So if you separate them, you start showing up inconsistently, and that goes back to the whole idea of authenticity, like we just talked about. And so, to me, I think the best leaders and the best business owners, the best business leaders out there are the guys that you want to be the same always. And that used to be a sign of weakness, or seen as a sign of weakness. But to understand that, okay, if business and my personal life are all one, then I have one set of standards. That's just a starting point. So there's a lot of other benefits to that, but at the base of it, it's you're building a life, and you happen to have a business that you run. You happen to have a son that you raise or a daughter that you raise. You happen to have these different components. You happen to be a runner. You happen to be whatever it might be. You're building a life. And so then seeing how that business fits into it also changes now. Instead of, hey, I'm building a business and I have a life. It just completely shifts the perspective and the approach that you take at that point. It did for me, at least.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Even putting in perspective of like in the last decade, like so much has changed. Our culture has really shifted, and the way that, as you're describing that, the ways that I've done that and have been trying to learn how to do that and to do that better. Every time I do it, it feels better. Mm-hmm. I feel more free, and I feel like I can just be me, right? It's not like me, the business owner, and then me, but I'm doing this. I'm filming this wedding this weekend with this like incredibly high profile client, but they're 20 years ago, I would have felt like, oh gosh, like I got to turn it on, and in that phrase, like I've got to turn it on, and just like I've got to be business Ryan and talk in corporate terms, and so that they just think, man, that guy's like, what a business owner. Like today, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I could care less. Like if I stumble over my words, I want them to feel like I like that guy, right? And the last time I worked with them was a few years ago. That was what they basically said that. They said that a couple of different times. They're just like, you are just like, special. I don't know. I'm making words up. They didn't say special, but that was my takeaway. And I was like, it's so cool for me because this was a process for me, is that I was being me. I wasn't being inauthentic. I wasn't being fake. I wasn't trying to be somebody I wasn't. So that if they came to the business or if they came to my house, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, okay, I can see, yeah." And in the way that you talk to your kids, and it's not always perfect, but the way I talk to my clients isn't always perfect. And I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be more patient and carrying all of that stuff.
Probably one of the most important things that it does for you too, though, is when you think about. Most of us don't have the capacity to really, in a given day, let's say, most of us don't have the capacity to accomplish more than like 3 big things, let's say, and really from a priority standpoint. And if you take and look at it as the business and the life is separate, at some point something's going to give, and typically it's going to be at the expense of your personal life. If you're building a business, and I'm saying that from firsthand experience, right. Making this mistake, making everything about the business, and then, okay, my health can wait, my relationship can wait, my presence with my son can wait. All these other things become non-negotiable, or can become negotiable, and because I can only have the capacity for so many priorities. And so I have found, for me at least, that when I look at it as, okay, this life that I'm building has my physical, mental, spiritual health, has the business health, relational health, these different components. I can look at each day and make sure that I'm giving each of those different priority, but making sure I'm giving them attention and seeing each of them as this is all important to move the needle today. All of these areas. This one for the business today. This one for my physical, mental health. This one maybe relationally, whatever that might be, and it could shift. But now I look at it as one, and I'm limiting what I make a priority, because I can't make everything a priority, or nothing is. And right. Giving everything a little bit each day actually is going to add up. That cumulative compound interest kind of principle is true in our lives. And so that's the benefit of it mostly, is designing your life and business in a more cohesive manner that actually benefits you, your health, your life, all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm reading. Have you read, what is it called? What is it called when you put something off? Procrastinate. Have you read Procrastinate on Purpose?
I have not.
So I'm in the middle of the book right now. I actually just sent the guy a message. I would love to get him on the show, but he talks about that very thing where you've got faith, family, business, like all the different things, and he says, basically, like, to do them all well, it's like really hard. But there are seasons where it's like, man, right now, like I really need to focus on the business, but as you're doing that, your physical health kind of maybe takes a back seat, or time with your family, or your faith, or whatever those things, and it's like this constant juggling. But it was like, kind of giving permission of like, it's okay to like have a season where you're going to focus on your business and really get this stuff kind of to the next level, and then take some time off and, go really focus on your family. And if you can find a good balance, that's great. It's sometimes really hard to do. But part of what he's talking about is that in our business, we want to build our business and our work around our lives versus building our lives around our business. And if like that's our biggest concern, is getting this business to a spot where, you're happy with it, good luck. I mean, as a business owner for, almost 2 decades, I'm much happier about where things are at today than I was a long time ago. And I had a goal of like not always being the cog and always being the one that was needed, but to be able to take time off and to be able to spend time with my family. So if you're not building your business in a way to where you can do less work, then it's going to be really, really difficult to find a good balance.
Yeah, Adam Grant, I'm reading a book by him called Originals. I don't know if you've read that book. But as you're talking about that, it makes me kind of think about it. I think we often think of those who are the innovators and go out and do these big things that we all know later in life, like let's say a Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, whatever. You look at and you think they were just impulsive and just had to move quickly toward things. And you actually realize through a lot of studies that really they're actually very deliberate about how they approach risk, and they're patient even in it. He uses the example of Warby Parker, how those guys started, and how long they took to actually get off the ground. And I think that's the benefit. One of those things when you look at it as a life as a whole, you're able to look at maybe in the business, there is a focus right now that needs more energy and effort, but it doesn't mean that these other things don't matter. But you're able to look at it with a different perspective, saying it's instead of an all or nothing mindset, you're able to say, okay, at least like when it comes to maybe I can go for a 20-minute walk every day instead of running, an hour or going to the gym for an hour. But you're able to look at that and say, like, what matters most right now here, what matters most right here to move life forward, including the business, including these different things. And so I think that, when we were talking earlier about what am I learning, that's that patience thing, right? Like doing something is better than nothing always.
Right.
I thought
you were going to say something else. I was like, right.
No, I was like, no, that's it.
Keep on. That's good. Oh, okay. Yeah. No.
I like to just end it awkwardly so that no one knows. Is he going to say something else, or should I jump?
That's my job. That's what I usually do. Like, what is happening here? I feel like you're the new host.
Wouldn't be my first time hosting a podcast.
That's right. Give us a little commercial about your show and this idea of fighting for brilliance.
Yeah, the Fight for Brilliance podcast is something I need to have you on, first of all.
Oh, yeah, let's go.
Let's do that. And then, but no, I started that podcast. It'll be coming up on a couple of years here once we hit 2022. I looked at my life, and just the recurring theme that I was living out was this idea of fighting for brilliance, and realizing that constant pursuit, not for perfection, but just to step into like what you ultimately can do, the best you can do with what you have in any area of your life. That's what I was pursuing. And so, as I realized, and I was having conversations around it, that there's others that are doing the same, and it looks different and sounds different for everybody. And so let's talk about that. And so I just decided to start the podcast, really with the focus on helping people rebel against complacency and conformity. And so using personal experiences or using guest interviews, that's what we talk about on the show. So yeah, we need to have you on for sure, though.
Love that. Yes, go listen to that show because you just get a lot more of this right here. I don't want to end the show, but we do have to do that shortly. I would like for you to share where else can people follow you and find out about all the cool stuff that you have going on, plus the secret initiative that we're not going to say right now, but you're going to want to know, so you're going to want to be connected to Justin somehow.
The best way to stay connected is probably on Instagram. I mean, instead of going to websites or anything like that, let's just get to know each other, hang out online. At Keller Thinks is my handle. I go back and forth with people all the time on DM on there, just having conversations around ideas and things like that. So that's probably the best way to connect.
Awesome. So Justin, as we wrap up here, you're the branding, expert. How would you summarize this episode? What kind of maybe a takeaway and or just kind of like inspirational? Give us a mic drop moment, if you don't mind, just real quick.
Well, I doubt it'll be a mic drop moment. But as I think about this conversation that we've just had, I mean, and I'm thinking about what I would have hoped someone would have imparted and talked to me about as I was building my business would just be the idea that you just can't underestimate having courage and believing in yourself. You can't underestimate that at all. And that determines really what you charge. It determines a lot of who you work with, and it determines really every aspect of what you build. You can't minimize just the courage to believe in yourself, to believe in the way you want to build your life and your business, and just not to neglect relationships along the way, and not to neglect yourself along the way, and build a cohesive life that includes the business that you're building too.
Dude, I'm just dropping the mic.
Stop.
Right
No, you're gonna
awesome.
the flag's gonna drop off.
Oh yeah. But I have a backup.
Okay, good.
Hello. Just kidding. That's not a backup. It's not even plugged
Oh,
in.
I was like, what?
You're like, wow.
Hold on, so do I.
Oh, look at you. Look at us. Actually, I've got 2 backup mics. I've got my shotgun mic too.
I really don't have
beat
one.
ya. Dude, thank you so much, man. This is so great. I'm so glad that we finally were able to do this. Thank you for the life that you're living and how you're sharing it and inspiring a lot of people along the way.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Don't forget to check out the show notes for any of the links or things that we talked about on this episode. And I would love to hear from you. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook, leave a comment. Let me know what stuck with you. What did you like? What didn't you like? What do you want more of? So leave a comment, and I really, really enjoy seeing those. And chances are I'll probably respond to you too. So if you're not in our Facebook group, you can get access to that at studiosherpas.com/community. And I heard a rumor that not everybody has signed up for the free workshop that I have created for you. So unless you're like amazing on client calls and you just have all the confidence in the world and you can get a client's budget and really know how to budget accordingly for all of your projects, you don't need this. But if you struggle or you get frustrated and annoyed on client calls because by the time you get off the call, you're like, man, this sounds like it could be a massive job. They're a big company, but I don't know if they have the budget. I really don't even know where to start. Go sign up for the workshop at studiosherpas.com/budget, and I'm going to equip you with the strategy in the format that I've used for my calls for a ton of years, to where I've got so much confidence on these phone calls. It's really easy for me to 9 times out of 10 actually get a client's budget. And if I don't get their budget on that call, I have a good understanding if it's a client that I want to even continue pursuing to try to work with before we spend tons of time quoting and estimating out, and then 80% of the time, those clients that we're just sending numbers to, they're looking at 2 or 3 other video companies anyway. So we're more of a commodity at that point, and I can really get a sense on the call using this format that I teach if they're just after a number or if they really are after a company like ours and they're interested, because those are the clients that I want to work with, ones that value what we do, and those are the ones typically that are going to spend the kind of money that we would charge for the kind of video that they want. So go grab that. Get access to that free workshop at studiosherpas.com/budget. You can follow us on Instagram at Grow Your Video Business. I'm also on Instagram at Ryan Coral. And if you would like, please send me an email, ryan@studiosherpas.com. If you have any topic ideas, suggestions for the show, or just, anything nice you want to say. If it's not nice, don't email me. Send complaints to complaints@studiosherpas.com. And that email will get kicked back to you because I don't think that email actually exists. I love you so much. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will see you on next week's episode.